Good afternoon. My name is Eleni Buonova. I'm an MBA candidate at INSEAD. When we speak about the role that Brazil can have in the net zero transition of the world, forests are for sure a key topic. As we saw this morning, Brazil has the potential to be the #1 nation in nature-based solutions mitigation potential. And reforestation is a very important part of that. Within the framework of this panel discussion, we aim to approach the topic from solutions perspective. How can forests contribute to solving the climate crisis while also benefiting communities around it and safeguarding biodiversity? What is the role of nature-based solutions in companies' decarbonization journey? To discuss that, please help me welcome to the stage André Guimarães, Executive Director of IPAM, Instituto de Pesquisa Ambiental da Amazônia. Benjamin Komarnicki, Head of Private Equity at AXA. Thank you for being here. Pauline Blandin, Impact Investment Manager at BNP Paribas. Thiago Picolo, CEO of re.green. Thank you. And to moderate the panel, please welcome back to the stage Angela Pinhati, Head of Natura Sustainability. Thank you.
So, hi everyone, a pleasure to be here again. I would ask everybody to keep on time once we have Andrea with a very tight agenda, and maybe in the end he will need to leave us, okay? So let's go straight to the point. I would like to ask AXA and BNP, Pauline and Benjamin, why not nature-based solutions in Brazil? So what factors led your company to prioritize Brazil for its nature-based solutions portfolio? So Pauline first, please.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for the invitation. So just maybe to put the context first, so here I'm talking on behalf of a small team within BNP Paribas. Obviously we're a very large group, but here I'm talking from the point of view of the team that I work for. We're in charge to have a small team, we're 5 persons, but in charge of investing an amazing mandate. Here we have an envelope of 200 million euros. We're investing the bank's own capital, so this is BNP Paribas' balance sheet that we're investing in early stage companies and projects around 3 impact areas. So we have social impact, we have climate change more from the point of view of decarbonizing industries, mobility, cities, etc. And we have natural capital. So nature-based solutions is one of the 3 priorities that we have in this envelope. So we have 55 million euro to invest in nature-based solution. So when we mention nature-based solutions here, we look at projects or project developers that are acting on protecting or restoring natural ecosystems. We look at solutions or companies that allow transitioning to regenerative practices in agriculture and forestry. And we also look at innovations from natural resources. So biological inputs, innovations based on seaweed, biochar, etc. So when we look at those themes, obviously, based on what we all heard today, Brazil has a huge role to play on those areas. And since we have a global mandate, we have the capacity to invest in companies and projects in Brazil. And there's also a good strategic fit because we, BNP Paribas Group, here I'm talking the other hat of talking about the group's presence, we have a big presence in Brazil. We have a local desk that has CIB activities where we finance some corporates there. So there's also a good fit to invest in solutions that will allow our corporate clients to achieve their decarbonization strategy. And from that point of view, that activity, the CIB did, well, business as usual activity, I think NPS or natural capital preservation in that sense has been also a top priority for the bank. We've taken strong commitments on deforestation and applying strong requirements to our clients. So trying to be short. But
Thank you. Benjamin, please.
So I'll try to be shorter because it's, I would say, more of the same. So will not be boring to repeat the same reason why, but same AXA Group is investing its own balance sheet money and also as part of the management of its policyholders' contributions. We are having decided a heavy investment program into natural capital in general. So actually 500 million euro to be deployed, not only in Brazil, but Brazil was the first pick for the biggest deal to date. Maybe some of you have heard about Mombac partnership in Brazil, so maybe we can talk more about it later in the panel. But in short, AXA has been for a couple of decades one of the biggest, I would say, passive forestry owner in France and Europe. So I think natural capital is one step further about having a more active management and more active impact. Why Brazil? To answer the question, it's also because it's one of the largest accessible market in the world. So a lot of opportunities, a lot of challenges, but a market with project availability, partner availability. I think that's important to start with. A lot of challenges, but as it is a voluntary market about carbon credits, everything will be about trust and making the good framework to build the good level of trust is probably something which will be very important for AXA and others for us to continue to invest into Brazil. So we have not done the full bucket with Mombac. We can do more in Brazil, but we are also looking at other markets also for a couple of diversification topics. But Brazil was the first priority and the first pick for the strategy.
Good. So, Thiago, re.green is recognized by uniting the best of science and a group of important traditional investors in Brazil. You also have very ambitious targets. Can you tell us more about this endeavor and why do you believe there is a space to restore 1 million hectares and much more in Brazil?
Sure. Well, I want to start it off thanking the organizers of the conference for the invitation. I've been to the one in New York, and I'm really happy to be here in Europe for the first one as well. Very quickly, re.green is an ecological restoration company. So what we do is we take areas that were deforested in the past, generally decades, sometimes even centuries ago, and we restore the native tropical forest that was there before it was cut down. We use a variety of methods to do that. 100% native species, and regardless of the method that we use, the end goal is always the same, that within a 30 to 50 year time horizon, we'll have a fully restored forest that not only has a physical composition of a forest, but has all the ecosystem processes reestablished, which is very important for the resilience of the forest. You asked about this goal, the goal of 1 million hectares. And I think it's an interesting question because depending on how you look at it, you come to different conclusions. I think on the one hand, it's a tremendously bold statement and tremendously bold goal. I think traditionally ecological restoration is something that's been done at a small scale with philanthropic capital, very important work, but we believe that the time had come for us to complement that with a larger scale approach. The head of restoration at re.green is a gentleman called Ricardo Rodrigues. He was the head of the ecological restoration department at the University of São Paulo, and over a 35-year career, he restored about 70,000 hectares. So for us to want to do 1 million in a lot less than 35 years is quite something. On the other hand, depending, if you look at it from another angle, you can see how feasible that number is, both from a demand perspective and also from a supply perspective. From a demand perspective, I mean, the world has a 60 gigaton problem, right? And ecological restoration is going to be a very small part of that solution. And re.green will be a small part of that small part. When we hired McKinsey to do our go-to-market strategy, and I told the guy that our goal was 1 million hectares, he turned around and said, why not 2 or 3? And I said, you're crazy. And he said, look, we believe that ecological restoration is going to do 300 million tons of carbon sequestered per year, sort of in the long run. If you do 1 million, as you're saying you're going to be doing 15 million tons capture. That's 5% of the market. You can aim higher than that. Another angle, and Roberto mentioned this when he was here in the other panel, is the sheer amount of land that we have. We have 194 million hectares of pasture lands. That's a good part of Western Europe. And we have 90 million, which is degraded. Planaveg, the plan that was created for restoration in Brazil, aims for 12 million. So if you look from the supply side, there's also a lot of room for us to be doing what we're trying to do. So I think it's quite clear that that number is feasible. The challenge is to scale and to do it fast.
That's true. I couldn't agree more. And then going to André, how do you see the role of nature-based solutions in Brazil to complement Brazil's environmental legislation and command and control interventions, André?
Well, let me start apologizing because, as Angela said, I have to run away in about 30 minutes or so to catch a plane. But going to your point, let me start asking a question to the audience. What would you say is Brazilian export product number one? What would you say? Soy? Maybe beef? All of them and none of them. It's photosynthesis. That's what Brazil exports. Brazil is the leading export in photosynthesis. And going back to your question, Angela, and actually rolling back the movie 50 years ago. 50 years ago, Brazil was a net importer of food. If you look at the balance sheets of our country, we used to import beef, we used to import rice, we used to import beans. Basic food was actually imported. 50 years later, Brazil is number 1, 2, or 3 in the 10 most tradable agricultural commodities in the world. This is a success story. However, that took place at the expense of 50% of the Cerrado, our central savannas, and 20% of the Amazon. The model that took us here can't continue. So, trying to answer your question, Angela, we actually applied to a challenge that we had, which was the current account balance, or unbalanced back then, nature-based solution. So we've entered the Cerrado and we entered the Amazon. We took the advantage of this photosynthetic capacity of ours, the soils, the water, the Amazon flowing water all over the country, in order to achieve the objective of replacing the imports of food. And we were successful in doing so. Now the challenge is, for the future, is to redesign that model. We can't continue opening Cerrado, opening the Amazon. And why is that? That's an important point. 90% of our agriculture is not irrigated. It depends on natural water cycles. Those natural water cycles are maintained in South America, and I'm not talking only about Brazil, but in South America, in the southern cone of South America, because of the Amazon. If you take a plane in São Paulo and fly across the world, you'll see deserts all over. Kalahari in Africa, Australia, Atacama in Chile. The only place where you don't have in that latitude a desert is São Paulo. São Paulo, Rio, the southern part of Brazil. And why is that? Because of the Amazon moisture that comes down to those cities, to that area, including the Cerrado. And that's for no other reason why we can exercise that photosynthetic potential of ours. So the challenge is again now is how can we convert that potential into generating natural-based solutions? As Thiago said, replanting forests, maintaining forests, implementing new technologies to produce more in a concentrated area. Those are challenges that we need to face. But the good news is that we've done that before. And I think we have the tools, as we have seen earlier today, to do that again.
Thank you. So going forward, we have just seen earlier today that Brazil has the world's highest potential of reforestation and avoided the forest conversation, the source of BCG report and presentation. However, this is still a small market. In this round, I would like to hear your perspectives about the primary challenges that need to be addressed to encourage more actors like yourselves to create a thriving ecosystem. So, André, again, what are the enabling conditions needed for nature-based solutions to realizing their full potential in Brazil?
Excellent question, Angela. Let me focus the answer for this question in the Amazon, right? I forgot to mention, I work for the Amazonian Environmental Research Institute, and we've been doing research in the Amazon for the last 30 years, trying to understand the interactions between humans and the forest, under a premise that it's possible to coexist. That's the premise of our work. So that's what we've been doing over the past 3 decades. The challenge, once again, is to redesign the investment, or let me put it another way. We need to reorganize the attractiveness for investments. Right now, investing in the Amazon is a burden, right? You don't have infrastructure, You don't have telecommunication systems. You don't have, human capital. Everything is limited in the Amazon. So I think we need to do the homework. We, meaning Brazilian society, and I'm not talking only government. Government has a role to play, all the 3 levels, but we need the private sector to invest in education, for example, driven towards producing, technical people for addressing the opportunities that the region presents, which are enormous. Right? There are so many crops, there are so many industries, so many businesses that can be performed and developed in the Amazon. It's an untapped market. But in order for that market to mature, we need to create those enabling conditions. And in my view, is a homework that Brazilians need to do. In other words, implementing a better infrastructure, making sure that the regulatory framework drives us towards this new economy, away from the old economy. So there are homeworks, that most people, most sectors needs to be engaged in order to create those enabling conditions, human capital, infrastructure, and so on. The capital will flow, but we need to do the homework.
Yeah, that's true. I think then we can balance better the investments toward the Amazon rainforest, and guaranteeing due diligence and the whole system working. So, Thiago, you have already planted some thousands of hectares of forest, and you know that this is not an easy job at all. What are the main challenges you are facing, and what needs to change in the business environment to make re.green's journey easier? I want to hear this because it will help me at Natura as well.
Now, I'll start by telling a story. I'm not traditionally from forestry or traditionally from the environmental sciences or areas. And I remember before joining the company, I thought, it's going to be really hard to convince someone to buy this because you can't really touch it. You're not obligated to do it. But it's going to be a piece of cake from operations because I have all this operational experience. Selling is not easy, but a lot of people come to us. Operating is really hard. So I can tell you that there's a lot of challenges. And they all have to do with the fact that we're trying to do at scale something that hasn't yet been done at scale. So while we're creating a company, we're also, along with others, helping to create a sector. So I think lots of the challenges that we have faced in these first few thousand hectares that we're restoring, both in the Atlantic forest and the Amazon, have to do with the fact that there is no supply chain, no value chain readily available to restore tropical native forests. So I can give you some examples, like on the operational side, for example, it's tough to find service providers that are ready to and willing to engage with us. They're traditionally used to working with big eucalyptus companies, very large areas. With us, they have a much smaller area to work with, different conditions, different species. So they need to invest a little bit in that relationship, and we're trying to convince them to become suppliers to us. There's the whole issue of seeds and seedlings. We need to plant quite a high diversity of species, sometimes upwards of 100 species, and these seeds and these seedlings are not readily available. And so finding that and finding them at the right time is something that's quite challenging. One point I like to make also has to do with R&D. The way we plant IPE today is the same way that it was planted 200 years ago. Compare that again with eucalyptus, which has multiplied our productivity per hectare by a factor of 5 in the last 50, 60 years. So that's another big challenge. How do we put in the time and put in the research to improve the way we do things so that we can track a trajectory that's similar to what commercial species have done in Brazil. Finally, a third, I think, very important challenge that we face has to do with financing. I think this has been said in other topics here as well. It's a capital-intensive effort. Most of the capital goes in the first year, first 18 months. The carbon is sequestered over time, along many, many years. So it's a classic case of needing to finance that investment in the beginning, and often commercial banks are not quite ready to do that. It's a different sector. It's just starting up. Nobody's done it. There's not that much data on how these native trees will grow over time. So cracking that code, I think, is also a big challenge. We've had help from many. BNDES approved us for a loan from Fundo Clima for 187 million reais, which was very important, but it's still in the very beginning, early stages of the game.
It's interesting to hear because sometimes at Natura we face the same challenges. For example, to process the cities, we have a lot of good equipment to process corn and other seeds, but you do not have a proper one to break, for example, the Brazilian nuts. And then we try to develop equipment. So it's everything is different.
And I think when we started 2.5 years ago, we had, I think, the best possible science on how to restore a hectare. Professors and researchers had worked for many years. If I look at what my models look like today, it's already a lot different from what they look like in the textbook. So learning by doing, I think, is very important too.
It's true. It's true, but also an importance to have research and technology embedded in those supply chains as well. No, so for Pauline, what prevents you from investing even more in nature-based solutions in Brazil? So recently, there was controversy surrounding SBTi's stance on the use of the carbon credits in private sector decarbonization efforts, and the role of forest projects is especially receiving lots of scrutiny. So I'd like to hear more from that.
Well, I think, again, for us, talking from the perspective of our small team, we're a fairly recent team. This impact investment envelope was decided in 2021. So we've started deploying that envelope pretty recently. And so the investments that we've made so far are closer to our team, which is based in France. So our investments so far are in France. We're about to announce one in Europe. So I think having a bank such as BNP Paribas investing its own capital in new early stage models on impact themes is already a new frontier that we're pushing. So pushing that frontier to Brazil is another step that the team is working hard to jump, but we don't have anything to announce yet, but hopefully soon that will change. So what we need, I think, to deploy more investments in NBS in Brazil, I think we need to have strong partners to source the right opportunities. And right opportunities for us, that means that it will fit well both the impact thesis that we have, so the impact where we want that opportunity to achieve, but also we need to fit with our investment mandate in terms of structure and ticket size. And I don't think we have the same perspective, for example, with the other investors in the room. In our team, we have small tickets, so we invest tickets usually between 2 to 5 million euros. And with those tickets, we want to be a minority shareholder, but a significant minority shareholder. So we will be investing in companies that are fairly new. So we want to find the right compromise between, we want to incubate new models, help them to take them to the next stage, to scale up. But we also need to find fundraising rounds that are appropriate for our investment tickets. So once we've said that, we need to overcome the challenges of investing in NBS. We're on a new market, we're on new models, so there will be a lot of uncertainties on where the demand will go, where the prices will go, where the methodologies will go, what will be the regulatory risk. So there are a lot of challenges associated to NBS. We've been discussing about the land ownership, land title, which is something that is specific to Brazil. So then once we've overcome the questions related to investing in NBS, then we have the questions on investing in Brazil. And so we need to overcome what are the risks of investing in Brazil. And here we're investing in equity, so it's a long-term investment. And so what will be the political situation? What will be the economic situation? What is the risk associated to currency? What that will affect our participation? All the points that have been discussed, obviously. And for a bank, well, there's a kind of echo, but
return.
And so again, for a bank that is investing its own capital, it's something quite new. So I think that was some key obstacles that we had to overcome. And once we overcome those obstacles, we have the challenge of monitoring an investment. We want to be an active investor, so we want to be involved in the governance, so take part to the board of the companies. And so doing that remotely, we need to find the right compromise between being based in Paris, wanting to be involved in the companies, but not spending our time in the plane. So I think that's also crucial why we want to work with local strong partners. And by partners, we mean strong co-investors, but also strong local experts that can give their opinion on their views on some models. And then going to the issues about reforestation credits in particular. So obviously, I think, again, there are different point of views. I think there was, the debate, the SBTi debate. might be from the perspective of corporates, how they use those claims, those offsets. And so that's something that, for example, if I take the other hat, as a bank, we will be looking at the corporate's decarbonization strategy. And so, for example, the bank has developed huge teams that are analyzing all of our corporate clients' decarbonization strategy, how we can support them with some financing solutions. So we have big sustainable finance teams, but also analyzing from an ESG risk perspective. So obviously the bank has a strong framework for that. But then if you take the other point of view from a project developer, that's the source of revenues, and that will make most of the projects viable. And reforestation, for example, if compared to conservation projects, that requires more initial investments, that more capex intensive. So it has also to be rewarded by more premium or more funding. So the recent controversies on conservation projects on the baseline, they might have turned in favor of reforestation projects. I think for now we have seen more demand maybe for ARR type of projects. But we also know that it's something quite risky, and I think we have to be ready that there will be other controversies. And from us as an investor, really what we need is to have a strong, credible market, because one project failure can affect the entire market and can shy away all investors' appetite from all of the projects. So we need to see the project developers, how they fit with the methodologies. I think we need to have a certain alignment on methodologies to allow for some comparability for us as investors to be able to compare different projects. If we have as many methodologies as projects, it becomes more complex to analyze the relevance of each project. So we want to see projects, how they fit with the methodologies, how they analyze the risk of working with X, Y, or Z corporate as of taker of their carbon credits. And I think we all need to build the credibility of that market so that we can invest more in that.
Yeah. Benjamin, you can have your time. We are very, very well with the time, okay? You can breathe.
It's okay, but a lot of passion from Pauline on explaining what she wants to see probably even more in Brazil than today. That's probably setting the path for tomorrow's investments. What I could add from it, because I try not to repeat. First, I think from AXA perspective, we have not expired our ability to go into Brazil. I think we try to address in a structured way the nature-based capital investment. So as we have at scale investment program, we asked AXA IM ALS to set up an investment desk to be able to also coordinate globally. So that probably in the long term will address one of the topics raised by Pauline, which is the ability about overseeing advisory frameworks and consistency. Because having a global investment program where we can benchmark Brazil over other countries probably will help every country to upgrade its own standards. And second, if we have our asset manager branch opening a desk, is also to try to welcome other capital than AXA for other people to invest alongside AXA to have a bigger scale effect. Also, probably more skin in the game and reputation and access to market. So we try to go wider on that. Once we said that, I will take the other perspective to try to make a complementary answer is who is purchasing today those carbon credits and why from removal rather than avoidance. So it's a totally voluntary market. So it means that today you need to have corporate players who wants to be engaged, who wants to show engagement, and because of that, they are selective on the quality of what they purchase. They need to avoid greenwashing at their level, and it will dictate obligation at every layer of the investment chain. So from our off-taker to us, to the local partner in Brazil, and for the local partner in Brazil to oversee also project level teams or assets. If they do it, it's because they are able to pay a higher price than the cheapest avoidance carbon credit, and we see not only the controversies, but a lot of, I would say, bifurcation in the market with kind of two different markets depending on the quality of the carbon credits. And as it is a voluntary market, what will be key is the confidence of the final purchaser about the tracing and quality and long-term quality of the carbon credits. There, I think it's a mixture of many things in Brazil. It's not only reforestation, it's also cutting deforestation. So I think in the previous session, we got the message with the graph that as soon as you have a little bit more lax public policies, there is a natural tendency of in the country to stop acting for good at all times. So clearly, I think a lot of, I would say, more political engagement would be key to keep Brazil in the good path for it. And the rest will come with structuring the market with more local operators, more advisors, more probably double checkers that can certify the quality. For us, the final test is the ability to resell the carbon credits to top quality firms that are able to purchase over 20 or 30 years time, because we are talking about a stock of future production, having at their level enough reputation at stake to be careful about what they do. And this is a second level of quality test. So for instance, if you look at Mombac, one of the first corporate announcements they made was about selling long-term carbon credits to Microsoft. That's the type of player that we guess would have a lot of reputation issues if there were assimilated to greenwashing initiatives. So probably this will force anyone to continue being attentive and selective about projects. And I think that's the other way around. Otherwise, I fully agree with everything that was explained before.
Thank you. Thiago, what's your perspective on the role of carbon credits for forest restoration in a companies that is in the decarbonization journey?
Well, I think you can approach that question from three perspectives, I think, and they have been mentioned here. One is the perspective of the necessity for removals, for offsets, for the 1.5 degree target that we have. Another one is a perspective of the demand integrity, which was mentioned here. And finally, I think also from the perspective of the quality of the restoration solutions themselves. I think from the angle of the necessity for removals, I think for me at least it's almost a mathematical equation. If we want to get to 1.5 degrees, we're going to have some offsets, some removals along the way, even if just temporarily. I mean, even if we were able to get to net zero emissions, we still have a bunch of carbon in the atmosphere. We're still living with a level of global warming, which is causing severe problems for all of us. So I think for me, it seems quite obvious apart from any ideological considerations. I think if you accept that, then you need to talk about the demand integrity. And that's where sometimes you get into trouble because, if offsets are very easy and very cheap, and that generates some sort of incentive on the side of the emitters who, rather than doing the hard work, start buying these cheap offsets, then you have a problem. But I wanted to react to a couple things that Pauline said before finalizing with the role of forest restoration. I think there have been quite a few, articles debunking certain projects, especially red projects. But I think we shouldn't demonize these projects, and we especially shouldn't demonize the value of conserving standing forests. And somebody's got to pay for it. And perhaps the mechanism isn't going to be red credits, but who else is stepping up to pay for these things? And the second thing that you said that I want to react a little bit is this idea that one bad project taints the whole market. I don't think that's true for any other market. I mean, there are tons of companies that go bankrupt in every sector, in retail, in manufacturing, technology, and so on. And people don't stop investing in those sectors because of that. So I think your example of Microsoft is really good. We also just recently announced a deal with Microsoft for 3 million VCUs over 15 years. It's a massive deal. They're not sitting on their hands because The Guardian has written an article about some red project. They're actually putting in the work to know what they're buying and to partner up with high quality companies. Finally, on the role of removal credits, I think for me at least, we should avoid this false dichotomy where we're kind of combating removals versus conservation or nature-based versus technology. The truth is we're going to need all of them. And even if we use all of them, we might not get there. So they each have a role to play. I personally think that forest-based removal credits, reforestation credits, have quite a good equation for them. They have a cost which is a fraction of the cost of the tech-based removals. If they're done in a proper way, with a high level of diversity, with a concern to the restoration methodologies, you get a very resilient ecosystem. So it's a system that will take pressure, that will take impact, but will come back. And not even the best carbon removal machinery in the world is going to do anything for biodiversity when it's going to do something significant for those communities living around the forests. So I think there's also a really good argument from that standpoint.
That's true. We tackle lots of different aspects now. So, Andrea, how can credibility in the carbon credit markets be restored and further growth facilitated? And what measures are necessary to rebuild this credibility?
First of all, Angela, we need to look at the past. And I remember during the Kyoto Protocol cycle, not many forest projects took off. And for a number of reasons, including how to monitor, risks of permanence, risks of additionality, risks, all sorts of risks. But remember that back then, 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, the best satellite sensors that we had a precision of 100 meters. Today, we have satellites with a precision of centimeters, right? So the technology evolved a lot. So today, saying that we can't monitor a forest project is, too much, right? So I think the potential is there. And I'll go back to the previous question, Angela, because I forgot to mention one of the key enabling conditions that we need in order to bring the capital to make the right investments, which is land tenure. Right? If you look at states like Pará, for example, which is, I think, is the second largest state in the Amazon, 70% of the properties do not have hard documentation, right? Mato Grosso is different. It has a different story. 80% is documented. São Paulo is not more than 90%, but Pará, Amapá, Roraima, and most of the Amazon has nearly no documentation, no land titling. I mean, how are you going to make, I think Thiago's life must be tough, getting, finding his way around, finding the properties or the partners on the ground, to really implement the project. So I think, once again, doing the homework of creating those enabling conditions, we will attract the capital. However, and this is a big however here, we have to do it with responsibility. And I'll say two obvious things here. One is, excuse me, if carbon projects, they have one objective, which is to help us mitigate climate change. We cannot forget that, right? So I'm very happy to have people making money out of it. I'm very happy to make companies cleaning their image about on that. But at the end of the day, we have the climate issue to sort out. This is obvious thing number one. Obvious thing number two is, if we are talking about carbon markets and carbon credits in 20 years' time, it means that we failed. So this is a temporary market. So with that in mind, we have to be very responsible in terms of creating the regulatory framework, making the right investments in order to maximize the benefit to the climate, in order to minimize the risks. We are, as we speak, discussing a legal framework in Brazil for the regulated carbon markets, right? It's a very important discussion. Right? It has everything to do with the future of the investments, with creating those enabling conditions, with allowing for companies to make good investments, generate good social and economic results on the ground, but also help mitigate climate change. Right? So sorting out that equation is not simple. It requires a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion. We have many people in this room that have been engaged in this kind of conversation. There are many different points of view, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we have more homework to do. I would love to have more investments taking place in Brazil, more re.greens taking place. The opportunity that re.greens is facing is humongous. But if we don't do the homework, that's going to be challenging.
It's going to be tough. Yeah. That's true.
And my apologies, I have to run. Sorry about that. I have to emit some carbon to go to Milan, so sorry about that.
Thank you so much, André. So we were quite on time, but let's move to the next block. Moving beyond carbon projects, the importance of co-benefits and biodiversity. So how can co-benefits, particularly biodiversity preservation, be effectively measured and priced? Is there demand for such attributes? this is something that I'm very interested on.
I'll start so that you will try not to repeat me. No, I think speaking about AXA as a corporate first and then to Brazil, I think 3 years ago, everything on communication was about impact and green and climate. And I think this has changed very rapidly. Today, all of AXA commitments are more weighted around just transition principles. And transition in the meaning that we are not opposing green to everything else. Transition means both being more inclusive with local communities, on board other consideration, and I think I'm just lost my panelists to talk about biodiversity a bit more because it's one of the super challenges for Brazil, and also onboarding, but a kind of grey to green type of strategy to convert the existing, because you cannot recreate everything. Once we said that, when it comes to natural capital in Brazil, again, as it is a market based on a voluntary participants, people, we want to know enough about the project to be able to communicate about it. So we think that there is a lot more curiosity than even 2 years ago about the nature of the project, what are the side benefits outside the project, so outside the pure emission of carbon credits. And we see a lot of people being ourselves first and also more in the market, becoming more curious about what are the biodiversity initiatives, meaning that you don't reforest to recreate the same issue about extensive overexploitation that lead to future issues in 20, 30 years time. So you know it from agriculture or past forestry exploitation, so let's try to learn from it. The not to bombard the numbers, but the Microsoft carbon credits are a couple of kind of roughly 100 different species in the hectares under project, and also being, I would say, more inclusive or more attentive to local communities. So I think for Brazil, step one is to make sure that we don't exclude local communities from the project, meaning that matter a lot of legal matters about access to project. Step two is also making a role for local communities to also have a fair role and participation, whether it is working, having side benefits. I think in previous panels, a lot of discussion about infrastructure, notably in the Amazon region, but it's also where the forestry projects can happen. So that, I think, creating a lot of curiosity in the market. Ourselves at AXA, we are more than curious. We are demanding about those topics ahead of investment, also because it's important for us, and we believe that it will be important for any purchaser about carbon credits. Voluntary market need, you are not obliged to do it. If Brazil is not doing it, other countries probably will do it, and there will be better quality projects. So I think it's a good message to encourage everyone to be really best in class, to continue to foster best possible projects.
Yes, thank you, Benjamin. I think it's a real opportunity, for us, besides having this carbon credit opportunities, how to enhance and value the biodiversity and also the social aspects that go everything together within the same project. So I'd like to hear you, Pauline.
Yeah, I'll try and add without repeating. I think we see more and more interest on biodiversity co-benefits, or even biodiversity as the targeted impact. From the perspective, again, of our impact investment envelope, we're not investing to get the carbon offsets. Our mandate is to invest to incubate, or rather deploy at scale some models that have impact on certain themes that include biodiversity. So we're very interested to invest in projects that will target biodiversity and social, either as co-benefits or directly targeted benefits. And I think that's also a trend that we feel among investors. We see more and more demand for biodiversity benefits, not only attached to carbon projects, but also more and more initiatives trying to incubate biodiversity targeted projects. So I think you'll have, from the investors' point of view, you'll have two types of investors, though, that will be looking for a financial return, and in that case they will want to see how those biodiversity benefits will be priced, and so who are willing to pay for those and how they're going to price that. And then you have those investors who are targeting the impact, and they will want to make some claims that they have supported this and that projects, but both tie back to the question, the $1 billion question, which is how to measure biodiversity. I think we'll go through the same steps that we've gone for carbon, right, which is an easier maybe thing to measure than biodiversity. But so I think for investors, it's also an opportunity because we see more and more solutions, company deploying solutions, either tech or low-tech solutions, to measure biodiversity, be it through eDNA, be it through bioacoustics, satellite drone imagery, bees. I mean, we see a lot of things. So for us, it's very interesting to see all those solutions, all those new startups thrive. And as an example, one of our direct colleagues, I'm direct colleagues with the team that is in charge of managing the Solar Impulse Venture Fund. So they invest in rather tech companies. So they've invested in Nature Metrics, which is a UK-based company that measures biodiversity through eDNA. So I think we can see that as well from an opportunity. And then from the project developers, I mean, I'm sure you have a lot to say about it. What we hear is that the complexity is to find what is the best solution to measure biodiversity on your projects based on the local specificities, the size of the project, how granular do you want to go, resource costs, benefits analysis. So I think for us, what we'll want to see as investor is you are the experts on the ground, so you will be the one telling us what is the right solutions for us. We will need to come and support once the, as Andre would say, the homework is done. We can only support with the financials.
So, Thiago, I would like to hear how you at re.green tackle biodiversity and social aspects in your projects. And the killing question is, are you able to sell premium price carbon because of biodiversity and other social and environmental attributes? And what's your experience dealing with buyers?
So I'll answer that question. I think first taking a step back, and we define re.green as an ecological restoration company, not as a carbon credit company. Certainly the ecological restoration generates tremendous benefits to climate, and certainly we monetize that, but the company at its heart believes in the value of restoring ecosystems because that generates benefits across multiple different avenues. And at the very heart of the company, at the very core of the company, is research that was done by our partners, published in Nature, which seeks to optimize the benefits of restoration by geospatially localizing it in the best possible place, not only to generate the best carbon capture, but also to generate the biggest impacts to biodiversity and the best possible impacts to the community around. And if you restore 1 hectare in one of these specific places, for example, a corridor that links 2 forest fragments, you can have benefits that are 5 times, 6 times, 10 times higher than if you restore a random hectare somewhere that's deforested in a tropical forest biome. You asked about our ability to monetize these things. And in fact, we don't even call them co-benefits at re.green. We call them core benefits, because we see them as just as important as the climate aspect of it. And I think Benjamin mentioned something that to me rings very true about this bifurcation of the market. There are a handful, not too many, maybe a dozen companies that are very committed to this and have tremendous scientific teams with them and a high level of commitment that understand this very clearly and are willing to price that VCU a lot higher because it comes with these other core benefits. So with these guys, it's almost, and I'm sure I can get a few more dollars by put it in the Atlantic forest biome that's been so degraded and has such a narrative for the country. But to be honest, it's almost like a basic requirement. If my project is not contributing in an outsized way to biodiversity, for example, or to the communities around, I can't even get my foot on the door. I think in the future, hopefully that we will find ways to measure that in a way which is credible, and we'll find ways to monetize that. And generally, according to economic theory, when you sell the assets separately, you get better price than when you bundle them together. So we'll see if that's true. But I think it's already a reality that we get a premium price for it.
Thank you. And well, we are coming to the end, so I'd like to ask you a final message to the audience, each of you. Nobody? Once?
I have a radical idea. What if someone has a question from the audience? Right?
Hello, my name is Jorge. I work for our investment fund in UK. So settling fund focus on nature-based solutions. So we have seen that the breakdown between domestic, private and governmental sector very skewed towards governments. And I'm wondering what are the critical factors for the thesis to succeed if we still experience this very weighted portion of the investments being propelled by only the governmental space. I think it's a very critical thing because, at some point in time, if you don't see the private sector really waking up, it will be very hard to see this getting off the ground.
Maybe I can start. I'll just challenge that a little bit. We raised $79 million from investors. 100% of that is private. We sold 3 million VCUs to a private company. 100% of what? In the voluntary market. So 100% of what we do is the voluntary market with private capital. Our whole business model is based on this. Anything that comes on top of this will be icing on the cake, and I do hope it will come because it will allow us to scale a lot faster. It will allow us to have a much bigger impact. It will allow us to track towards that goal that we all want. But I don't think that today you have a market which is skewed towards the public sector. I don't know what you guys think.
I think it's a concern, but relatively remote concern to other countries. Meaning that obviously we would expect any country having ambition on the long-term preservation of resources to have strong public policies and strong public commitment. So that's something we cannot avoid to expect. I agree with you. There should be a balance with, I would say, not an overwhelming role of the public sector to leave enough space for the private to develop and foster. But I think the access to the private is relatively okay in Brazil. I think other countries are more problematic there. My concern would more be about being able to appropriately oversee, challenge and stimulate the private players to be able to not necessarily to regulate more, but at least to engage on transparency with independent advisors or project managers to control, monitor, co-construct, etc., etc. But I don't think there is an issue about the role of private. It will come, as you said, with more capital, and we would not expect the role of the public sector to diminish, at least in the short term.
I think it will more than come. I think it's already coming. It might be only the voluntary market, but the voluntary market has already enabled many projects to become investable because corporates, so private sector, are willing to take those commitments and to commit to buying significant volumes for a significant horizon. So that made many projects become investable, viable. We're talking about NBS as the future renewable energy market. So I think it's starting to be incubated, and we see more and more private investors. I think we've seen many new funds coming in, targets deploying NBS strategies. So I think it's already a good example of the private sector jumping in. So I want to be optimistic on that. And to answer to your question, I think to the audience, for us, I've mentioned the importance of working with partners, with co-investors, with experts. So for us, I think an event like this, to have Brazil come to Paris, is really crucial for us to make those connections. So thank you very much.
So thank you all. Thank you, Benjamin, Pauline, and Thiago. It was a pleasure to share the stage with you. Thank you all.